Greetings, friends. You are watching the Ruslan Belov channel. In this episode, we will take a detailed look at the situation in Ukraine as of January 28, 2026. Over the past 24 hours, a large number of truly significant events have taken place, so let us move straight to the analysis. During the night of January 28th, hostilities in the airspace continued. The Russian Federation and the Ukrainian side once again carried out strikes against each other's energy infrastructure facilities. From early morning, the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine has been publishing official data stating that between January 27 and January 28, 2026, the Russian side employed 147 unmanned aerial vehicles over Ukrainian territory. According to the Ukrainian military authorities, 103 of these drones were suppressed by electronic warfare systems or destroyed by air defense assets. In response, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation reports that during the same time period, the Ukrainian side launched 75 unmanned aerial vehicles. It is emphasized that Ukrainian drones were flying mainly, and in some cases almost exclusively, toward the southern regions of Russia. This primarily concerns Krasnodar Krai in the Black Sea coastal area, as well as the coastal zone of the Sea of Azov. The majority of the drones were destroyed precisely in this area. At present, various figures are circulating in the information space regarding the situation in Kyiv. A number of sources report that within the city of Kyiv and presumably in the Kyiv region, there are still around 700,000 subscribers who remain without electricity. In other words, hundreds of thousands of people continue to live under conditions of a complete lack of power supply. This clearly demonstrates that, despite the large-scale concentration of repair and emergency crews that were pulled into Kyiv from almost all regions of Ukraine, the Ukrainian side is apparently failing to cope with the task of rapidly and fully restoring the capital's energy system. Special attention should also be paid to the weather factor. Starting tomorrow, a sharp drop in temperatures is once again expected across Ukraine. While weather conditions over yesterday and today were relatively mild, with average temperatures ranging from 0 to -4 degrees Celsius, beginning tomorrow and for at least the next week, temperatures are forecast to fall to around -20 degrees. Under such climatic conditions, the likelihood increases that the Russian Federation may once again carry out another large-scale strike on Ukrainian territory using hundreds of drones and a significant number of missiles. Ukrainian sources are already almost unanimous in claiming that the next strike, which they believe could take place between January 29 and February 7, will be the most powerful to date. Moreover, according to incoming information, there may be two such strikes. The first phase predpoлагается to involve a massive strike on the city of Kyiv, with the aim of inflicting critical damage on energy infrastructure facilities. However, the purpose of such strikes is not limited solely to the destruction of energy hubs. Each large-scale raid forces the Ukrainian side to urgently mobilize all available resources in the energy sector, electricians, engineers, and repair crews, and concentrate them in the capital if they are not already there. As a result, large groups of specialists are pulled into Kyiv, sometimes involving hundreds or even thousands of industry workers who spend several days or even weeks restoring the system and achieving relative stabilization of the situation. According to information obtained from open sources and intelligence data, the second strike is planned to be carried out against those cities and settlements that at that moment will effectively be left without any protection or support from repair crews, since all main forces will be concentrated precisely in Kyiv. Already now, serious problems are being recorded in a number of smaller cities. For example, important video footage from the city of Kryvyi Rih has appeared in the information space today. Reports indicate that local residents are taking to the streets, blocking certain roads and sections of the roadway, resulting in localized traffic jams and congestion. These videos are actively circulating in the media and are presented as evidence of protest sentiment caused by the fact that in these settlements, electricity is supplied for only 2 to 3 hours per day, which is an extremely limited amount. However, if we look at the situation in Kryvyi Rih more broadly and analyze it at least over a 1-month time frame, it becomes clear that the current events are part of a longer process. The first reports of protests and attempts to block roads began to appear as early as January 18th, that is, roughly 10 days ago. Similar footage was recorded on January 21st, when residents went out to pedestrian crossings and blocked traffic. And today, reports once again appear about ongoing, albeit small-scale, localized actions, which some sources refer to as protests of conscience or protests of dignity. Thus, speaking specifically about Kryvyi Rih, it can be stated that protest activity in the city, even if minimal in scale, has been continuing for approximately 10 days. I would like to remind you that protest sentiment has also been recorded in the city of Khmelnytsky. This topic has already been discussed earlier. In addition, information about localized movements continues to emerge regularly from Odessa, which is a strategically important region. According to sources, during the night of January 27th to January 28th, the Russian Federation carried out another massive strike on Odessa. Footage of objective control is being published online. Local sources claim that the strike hit a critical infrastructure facility, which, according to some reports, was not merely damaged but completely destroyed. Photographs and video recordings are also circulating that show Ukrainian emergency and specialized services attempting to localize the consequences of the strike and extinguish the fire. According to information from open sources, the city has experienced disruptions in electricity supply, water supply, and heat supply. Given that a return of severe morosi is expected as early as tomorrow, it can be stated with confidence that this situation is likely to deteriorate further. In addition, there are other cities in Ukraine where a critical situation is being observed. These include Zaparia, certain areas of Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, as well as Kharkiv. However, over the past 24 hours, no particularly significant or high-profile information has been received from these locations. Against this backdrop, Volodymyr Zelensky and representatives of the Ukrainian authorities continue to promote the idea of at least a partial ceasefire, particularly with regard to refraining from strikes on energy infrastructure. Today, information appeared from Ukraine's Foreign Minister Sybiha, stating that Zelensky is ready to meet with Vladimir Putin to discuss and resolve issues such as the fate of the Zaparizhzhia nuclear power plant, as well as possible territorial concessions. Notably, this statement has already elicited a reaction from the Russian Federation. Today, Russian presidential aide and special envoy Yuri Ushakov proposed that Volodymyr Zelensky personally come to Moscow. It was stated that his safety would be guaranteed, and that all the outlined issues could theoretically be resolved in the shortest possible time if he were to agree to such a visit. However, with a high degree of probability, it can be assumed that such a scenario will remain unrealized. If we now turn directly to the line of contact, a large number of changes and several highly noteworthy episodes have been recorded there, deserving separate attention. Let us begin with two small markers in the area of the settlement of Barvinkov. Yesterday evening, information emerged about a strike by Geran drones on an electric train traveling toward Barvinkov. Judging by the published footage, in the first seconds after the strike the train was stopped, sustained damage, and a fire broke out in one of the cars. It cannot be ruled out that the fire spread to other cars as well, although there is currently no precise data on this matter. Additional video materials were also published directly from the Barvinkov area, showing the electric train that was hit continuing to burn. Rail traffic on this section of the line was completely halted. Later, footage appeared demonstrating the aftermath of the strike. The fire was extinguished over a fairly long period of time, trains remained on the tracks, and based on the lighting and overall situation, it can be assumed that the events were taking place during nighttime hours. The significance of this footage lies not only in the fact of the strike itself. Pro-Russian sources claim that the target of the attack may have been an electric train carrying units of the armed forces of Ukraine, reserves and reinforcements that Ukrainian command was attempting to rapidly transfer towards Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. According to another version, the strike was carried out with the aim of blocking railway traffic in order to prevent the transfer of forces and equipment to those directions. In addition, it is worth recalling other video materials that previously emerged from this same railway branch between the settlements of Lozova and Sloviansk. We discussed these recordings in detail the day before. As a reminder, a large column of equipment and a significant concentration of Ukrainian armed forces units were recorded along the railway. In the footage, one could distinguish what appeared to be armored vehicles, tanks, as well as standard cargo trucks. After the detection of this column, the Russian Federation delivered a triple strike against this concentration of forces using Iskander operational tactical missile systems. Apparently, following the strike, the entire column was completely destroyed. If one carefully examines the published footage and attempts to count the objects, more than 50 units of various equipment, weapons, and individual elements can be observed, which either are equipment or visually resemble it. Thus, we are talking about a fairly large column that was effectively annihilated. If we consider these events over a 2-day dynamic, namely during the period from January 27th to January 28th, one important detail stands out. Strikes were carried out both by unmanned aerial vehicles in the Barvinkov area and by Iskander missiles in the area of the settlement of Bliznyuki. At the same time, all these strikes were directed at the same railway line, the same branch. This makes it possible to assume that the Ukrainian side is currently attempting to transfer a significant number of units along what is effectively the only remaining functioning railway line connecting rear areas with the front line and passing through the settlement of Lozova. Apparently, Ukrainian command is attempting to concentrate forces in the Lozova-Barvinkov area and then subsequently redirect these units to various directions, whether toward Lyman, Costantinovka, or Doorilia. Thus, reserves of the armed forces of Ukraine are likely being formed here, which will later be employed on one of the sectors of the front. A scenario involving the creation of a kind of fire brigade cannot be ruled out either, forces that would be rapidly redeployed from one problematic direction to another in an attempt to stabilize the situation. However, the very fact of forming such reserves may also indicate that in the near future, the Russian army, in turn, may intensify pressure along the line of contact. All that remains is to observe how further events will develop. Nevertheless, the impression is forming that a large-scale and extremely intense battle is beginning. And first and foremost, this concerns the area of the settlement of Lyman. It is precisely here that over the past 24 hours, Russian units have managed to significantly improve their tactical position. Let us take a closer look at the situation in the Lyman area. The configuration of the front line that you are currently seeing reflects the situation as of the end of January 28th. For comparison, the situation in this sector as of the end of January 25 looked different. It was during this period that the Russian Federation moved to decisive offensive actions aimed at eliminating remaining pockets, fully clearing the grey zone, and creating new pressure points on Ukrainian defences. Over the past several days, Russian units have managed to advance significantly forward. At present, according to assessments by neutral and pro-Russian analysts, Russian forces control the entire line of the northern, northeastern, and eastern outskirts of Lyman. In effect, the entire suburban area, as well as development along the city boundary, is apparently already under the control of Russian units. Offensive actions are being conducted along a fairly wide front, from the northeast toward the southwest. The total length of the active sector of the front is approximately 8 kilometers. In addition, a number of experts point out that Russian units are attempting further maneuvering to bypass Lyman with a push toward the settlement of Shurov. The objective of such actions may be to cut the last remaining supply routes. Movement is taking place in the direction of the Blue Lakes, which would allow for a reduction in possible withdrawal and maneuver routes for units of the armed forces of Ukraine. It is likely that the intensification of pressure on Lyman is precisely what has prompted the active regrouping of the Ukrainian side, which is preparing for a decisive stage of combat operations. The battle for Lyman, as well as for the adjacent forest area to the south, is of strategic importance, because the loss of these positions would open a direct route towards Sloviansk. In such a scenario, unmanned aerial vehicles would be able to reach the city without serious obstacles. The distance to Sloviansk is approximately 13 kilometers, and under such conditions, it would no longer be possible to speak of maintaining normal civilian life. An urgent and complete evacuation of the civilian population would be required. Offensive operations are also continuing east of Sloviansk, in the direction of the Sloviansk thermal power plant. No significant changes have been recorded on the map in this area, with the exception of a minor adjustment near the settlement of Zakotne, which was introduced based on data from neutral mapping sources. Overall, the front line in this sector has remained stable for a fairly long period of time. This relative stability is likely due to the fact that after the fall of Siversk, Russian units, advancing westward in pursuit of retreating Ukrainian forces, managed to bypass a number of fortified positions that remained behind the forward elements, while Ukrainian armed forces units may have continued to remain inside those fortifications. One such example deserves special attention. In the published footage, we see a powerful Ukrainian armed forces strongpoint located in the Sviato-Pokrovsky area, southwest of Siversk. The video shows Russian servicemen clearing this strongpoint using mines. These recordings were made earlier, but as of January 28th, the question arises. Either pockets of resistance by Ukrainian units are still present within these fortifications, or all these positions were mined in advance, and further advancement is possible only through their complete destruction. There is no definitive answer to this question at this time. In general, the front line has stabilized along the notional Zakotne-Reznikivka line, and the tempo of combat operations here has noticeably decreased. At the same time, the offensive along the M03 highway continues without a reduction in intensity. Over the past 24 hours, new adjustments have been made to the maps, and even pro-Ukrainian mapping sources confirm the advance of Russian units. All analysts without exception agree that heavy fighting is currently underway for the settlement of Nikiforivka, particularly for its southern part. Most mapping services depict this area as a grey zone, while some sources already indicate it as territory under Russian control. In practice, Russian units are assaulting the second line of defense and are advancing here quite actively. Next, we move to the Costantinovka sector. Here, the siege of the southern part of Costantinovka continues, which has effectively been cut off from major supply routes. Video materials have been published from the southwestern edge of the agglomeration in the area of the settlement of Ilinka, showing Russian artillery strikes against temporary deployment points of the Ukrainian armed forces. At the same time, no changes to the front line have yet been recorded on the maps. According to various sources, Russian forces are currently focusing their main attention on the small settlement of Berestokh, located in the southern part of the Kostiantinivka agglomeration. Today it is confirmed that Russian units have managed to significantly improve their positions within this village. In the future, using Berestokh as a foothold, the Russian army will likely attempt to develop an offensive toward Ilinka and expand its zone of control. Strikes using FPV drones continue against the southern part of Kostiantinivka, and the situation there remains extremely difficult. Some experts suggest that Russian units may also be conducting offensive actions in the northern part of Kostiantinivka. But at this time, this information has not been confirmed either by geolocation data or by changes on the maps. At present, the main focus remains on the southern part of the city, in the area of the Kryvyi Torets River. Next, we move to the Doorilia sector. The main events here are unfolding within the triangle of Suketske-Belitske-Zatishok, or in the configuration Zatishok-Rodinske-Belitske. According to information from various sources, over the past several days, the Russian army has been actively advancing in this area along the railway line in the southern part of Belitske. As of today, virtually all experts, regardless of their position, confirm that the settlement of Suketske, a small village located between Zatishok and Rodinske, has been encircled. A small pocket is clearly forming on the maps. According to the latest data, Russian units have fully closed the ring around this settlement, where apparently a limited number of Ukrainian servicemen remain. After the front line is straightened, Russian forces will be able to advance further toward Belitska at a higher pace. At present, FPV drone operators, artillery and aviation are actively operating against this settlement. At the same time, no footage of objective control confirming the presence of assault groups or sabotage units inside Belitske has yet been published. Next, we move to the Zaparia sector. Here, the Russian army continues offensive operations, and there are several important points to note. In the areas of Zaliznichne and Huliaipol, the map is being adjusted only slightly. Various experts report that Russian units have managed to entrench themselves, or are making active attempts to do so, in the southern part of Zaliznichne. At present, this is a key settlement on the southern direction of the western sector of the front. There is also information about the ongoing assault on Sviatopetrivka, which has been continuing for several weeks. It should be recalled that the Ukrainian side redeployed a significant number of reserves to this direction in order to stabilize the front line and prevent Russian units from reaching the railway line. Separate attention should be paid to video materials published from the area of the settlement of Ternavate. Today, pro-Ukrainian sources released a video in which, according to the author, Ukrainian FPV drone operators sent a robotic system equipped with a machine gun toward Ternavate. It is claimed that this robot allegedly attacked Russian positions within the settlement. At the same time, the video does not contain coordinates, and information about the filming location is based solely on the author's statement. Nevertheless, the very appearance of such reports may indicate that Russian units have possibly managed to enter the territory of Ternavate. The Ukrainian side, in turn, is carrying out counter-attacking actions, including the use of robotic platforms. In the near future, more data will likely emerge, including geolocations. If the presence of Russian units in Ternavate is confirmed, serious changes on the maps can be expected, since this settlement is of key importance and opens operational space for further advancement westward toward the city of Zaparia. The loss of Ternavate for the armed forces of Ukraine could have extremely serious consequences. On the western Zaparia direction, no significant changes have been recorded. Pro-Ukrainian analysts and open-source analysts are publishing detailed breakdowns indicating a significant presence of Russian units in this area, which are gradually expanding their zone of control in open terrain and advancing toward the settlements of Magdalenivka and Zapasne. These settlements are the last on this sector, after which a more open axis of advance toward the city of Kyiv becomes available. This concludes the overview. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for staying with the channel. Subscribe, support the episode with likes, and all the best to you.